Okay, let's look at net present value. That's number 3 here. What we're doing with net present value is we're figuring out what the total net present value using our discounting is for a particular investment. So we have some cash going out at the first, and then later on we're recouping our investment with inflows, but those inflows aren't actually worth as much dollar for dollar as our initial investment was. So we actually have to discount those back to figure out what they are at time 0. So the example I've given you here, we pay $200,000 for a machine. So usually what you do when you see this is you say the very first part of the investment, when you first outlay the money, is year 0. We're going to always discount back to this period. So if it's at year 0, then we just use the actual regular dollar number. So we have a $200,000 outflow, which is why I put it in brackets. Okay. So now we have at the end of year 1, what we're estimating is a $250,000 inflow. Excuse me. So we'll put $250,000 here at the end of year 1. But do we just compare this to this and say, well, we make more money here than we had going out, so it's a good investment? No, we don't actually do that because remember, at the end of year 1, that money is not worth the same amount as it was at the beginning of the year or at year 0. So what we do is we basically net present value this back to a smaller number using a particular interest rate that will be provided for you to figure out what is this amount actually worth at year 0. Okay, so in the example here, I've given you a 12% rate of interest. Okay, so we will discount back $250,000 using a 12% rate of interest. We're just doing it one period. This is a real simple calculation, saying how much is this worth 1 year before. And if you do that, the calculation is $250,000 divided by 1.12, and that gives us some number. And I've already calculated it there. So that number is, at the end of year 1, we have basically present value cash flow coming in, $223,214. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and erase this. Hopefully you understand what's going on here. These are only 2 inflows coming in. $200,000 outflow, $223,214 present value inflow. We just compare those two, $23,214. And we say, is this a positive or is it a minus? This is obviously above 0, so it's a positive. If something has a net present value greater than 0, then that basically tells us that's a good investment. Okay, so one thing that you're going to see going forward is you're going to have a lot more different inflows and outflows than when we saw right here. What would happen if instead of the $250,000 occurring at the end of year 1, what happened if it was at the end of year 2? What would you do then? Well, rather than just discounting once, we need to discount twice. So we went back 12% there, and we got the 223,214. Okay, we would need to take this back again another 12% and to get X there. Okay, not sure what that is. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But if that was then above 200,000, then we would say it's going to have a positive net present value and the investment would be good. If it was below 200,000, we would say, no, this is not a good investment. So you have to match up the time periods and say, when are the cash inflows coming in? Have to discount those back. So sometimes you have a steady stream, and there's tables, there's present value tables that help you do this. So you might have something where you have year 1, year 2, year 3, and each time you get 100,000. And so you can either do this manually, and you can say, we're going to discount this back once, we're going to discount this back twice, we're going to discount this back 3 times, or there's tables there. Since this is a steady stream of payments called an annuity, you can actually look up in the table and say, well, if there are 3 different payments, and for period 3, that would be n equals 3, and you have the interest rate, which was at 12%. What would 100,000 be worth? What's the factor that I need to times this by in order to get what the present value of these different payments would be? So there will be a lot of different examples for net present value. That's probably the one that we'll spend the most amount of time on in the homework in the discussion board. So the idea here in general is if net present value is greater than 0, then we're going to pursue that. If not, then we don't pursue it. Page 985, I've noted that. Make sure you understand that. There's different examples there for net present value. Some of them will probably be tricky, so hang in there. If you get stuck on a problem, there will be a lot of different inflows and outflows coming in. We'll continue to work on those in the discussion forum, and I'll help you out. The internal rate of return, here what we're doing is we're saying the net present value is going to be 0. We're going to basically true up what the outflows were and what the inflows were, and figure out what interest rate would we be able to use to make that net present value 0. So if that rate is greater than what our required rate is, say we have a required rate of 12%, and then the internal rate of return is greater than that, that was like 13, 14, 15%, then that would be something that we would need to, that we'd want to pursue. If it was lower, then that would be something we wouldn't want to pursue. So under number 3 for net present value, we're looking at the net present value being greater or less than 0. Here we're looking at the internal rate of return, which is what makes net present value equal 0, being greater or less than what our required rate of return is. That's a little tricky, so if you need to rewind the video and listen to that again, feel free to go ahead and do that. On page 989, I've noted that there's a good comparison of the 4 different methods. Don't just understand how to calculate each one of those, but you need to know logically and understand why some of these are stronger than the other ones, why the net present value methods are stronger methods than the ones that don't use the present value of cash flows. Understand kind of what's going on and understand not just how to implement it, but the strengths and weaknesses. Okay, the last thing I wanted to do, the last devotional I have for the course is by C.S. Lewis. I have actually a combined copy that has Mere Christianity and the Screwtape Letters together in one volume. These are 2 different books that came out. Hopefully you've heard of C.S. Lewis and read some of his pieces. These are probably 2 of his 3 or 4 most famous works. But Mere Christianity, like we've talked about, some of the previous devotionals in this particular course, we looked at Simply Christian by N.T. Wright and Cliff Knechtley's Give Me an Answer. Mere Christianity is simply kind of an apologetic of why the Christianity makes sense, what are the tenets of the Christian faith. He's writing to a friend who he's kind of trying in one way to explain Christian faith to them. Now the Screwtape Letters are a collection of short letters. They're all like 3 to 4 pages or so. And it's a real interesting premise of what Lewis is working from here. It's a work of fiction that is kind of instructional. Lewis presents this character called Screwtape, who he says is a master demon. And he's writing to one of his apprentice demons called Wormwood is the guy's name. Like an actual demon who is tempting a human being to stray from Christ. And what the master is doing is telling his apprentice to distract him in this area or to trick him in this area. And the idea here is that Lewis is presenting ways that Christians walk away from the faith, or things that they need to be aware of and conscious of as we walk with Christ, and the way that the devil tempts you. But he's presenting it, from the other side of saying, well, if I was a demon, how would I actually go about doing this, and where do we need to watch, as we walk with Christ? It's really interesting, not just instructional, but also pretty humorous as far as some of the things that he presents like in those letters, and would be a really good work just as far as conviction goes to help you stay walking with Christ on a regular basis. So anyway, C.S. Lewis' Mere Christianity was the first one. That was more of a instructional type book. Screwtape Letters is also a devotional work, but it's more kind of entertaining with a twist, in a different way to present Christian faith than you typically see in most readings. So anyway, congratulations. This is a workshop. Let me give you a little exclamation mark there. Whoa! One more. 2 exclamation marks. Whoa! Congratulations on being done. I'll help you in the discussion forum however I can. Be sure that you fill out the class survey. Let me know what you thought about the videos or study guides. Appreciate your participation. And if there's anything I can do for you, whether it's prayer going forward or recommendation letters or career advice, feel free to shoot me an email. Or once again, my phone number is 734-276-6417. Drop me a line and I'll do whatever I can to help you out. But God's blessings as you finish up the course, as you continue your education at Indiana Wesleyan and in life in general. Talk to you soon.